Do I?
Yeah, we're.
Oh, you just.
One thing I forgot to do is announce that this is on YouTube Live and the recording is a few days later. It can be viewed on the website,
Yeah, probably even tonight, but
even tonight.
we
Perfect.
just got the recording on. So I just want to say again, this is the May 14th, 2024 meeting.
Okay,
Good.
great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, City Clerk, can we have a roll call?
Councilmember Daughtry,
Present.
Councilmember Peters Hagen,
Present?
Councilmember Donahue,
Present.
Councilmember Shipman. Present. Councilmember Jarstad. Present. Councilmember Ewing,
Present.
Councilmember Tajin. I have not heard.
Can we have an emotion?
I'll move to excuse Councilmember Taja.
Second.
All those in favor of excusing
Aye.
Councilmember Tackett?
Aye.
He is excused. On to the approval of agenda. We do have one item under guest business. Item A is deleted tonight. And I do believe there's another request to change the agenda on item 9D.
I move to take item 9, consent agenda 9D off of consent and put it on action items.
Is there a
Second.
All those. Any other changes, requests or anything to the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the amended agenda? Aye.
Aye.
We have an agenda. How about if we go, Russ, is Russ here? There he is. I didn't see you, Russ. Sorry. Usually you're sitting over on that side of the table. Anyway, so that we do have an introduction tonight, if you'd like to take over.
Okay. It is my pleasure to introduce Dawn Erickson to the team. She's our new administrative assistant. She has worked in government for a long time. She worked for the city of Everett for about 12 years in Everett Transit. When she was there, she held different roles and has had customer service background, worked in grants management, and just a variety of other roles. When she was with CT, she also was on the Washington ride sharing organization board of directors and was their commute trip reduction administrator. So we're so happy to have her here, and she's really taken a load off of me personally and really just been a great support to the whole department so far. So we're so glad to have her.
Great, great. Welcome.
Welcome to the city. Yeah.
Hi, how are
And with that, we do have another introduction. Maximilian Roth, you want to step forward?
Evening, council members. I would like to introduce Lauren Frederick to you tonight. She'll be taking on the role of safety and training coordinator for the city. Lauren joins the HR team and she'll be responsible for managing city employee training program, therefore closely working with all departments, but with a focus on public works and the parks department. Lauren comes to us with extensive work experience. She served as the aquatics director for YMCA Seattle for many years, and more recently worked as a training manager for Topgolf in Utah. She's an experienced first aid and CPR instructor and has a passion for delivering and developing training to peers. Lauren and her husband are both native Californians and recently just moved back to Washington State from Utah, looking to make the Pacific Northwest their permanent home. They like to spend time with their rescued dog, Piper or Pippa? Pippa. Enjoy hiking, camping, and going on road trips. Welcome, Lauren, and thank you for joining the City of Lake Stevens.
At this time on our agenda, we have a few moments here for citizen comments and I do have one green sheet, which is a sign up. And so we'll call that person forward in just a moment. But City Clerk Chellen, do we have anyone online that is interested in commenting?
I don't see any hands, but I do have quite a people online. So if you'd like to speak to the council, now is your opportunity under city or citizen comments. Please raise your digital hand and I can let you into the meeting.
No one?
No hands.
Okay, with that, I would invite Loretta, is it Cussy, to the podium? Hopefully I pronounced your last name correctly. Oh, good. If you could state your name and if you're a resident of the City of Lake Stevens, and you have 3 minutes.
Loretta Cussy. Yes, I'm a resident of Lake Stevens. And my concern is I got my bill from Waste Management this week. And I have, I get a hard copy that I'm on auto pay. And I saw that there was an additional charge for an additional can. That was on January 31st. Well, on this January 17th, the recycle was not picked up. So we were to put our extra into a can for the pickup on the 31st. I went online because they said there was a photo. I couldn't find it at all. So I called them. I was online on the phone for about 33 minutes. And finally, when I got to talk to someone, they, sent me they emailed me a picture. And yes, it was my can, but they didn't pick it up. So why did they charge? And they said, well, the truck just takes pictures when there's additional cans. And my concern is that how many people go paperless, auto pay, and you guys aren't catching it. I caught it. But did that truck take a picture of every extra can that day and are charging you? And so I called a Robin at Waste Management, and she got upset with me, thinking that maybe I was calling for a personal complaint. And I said, no, it was taken care of. They took the charge off of my bill, but how about everybody else's bill? And she said, well, that wasn't my problem. I had no right to anybody else's bill. And I says, okay, but did you take a picture of everyone else's can? So that's my concern is, did Waste Management do that? She said she'd look into it. However, she did not take down my address, my account number. Even my name and phone number were just what I left her on a voicemail. So that's my concern with Waste Management. So I would check your bills and see if you're getting an extra charge for January 31st. So that's all.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Next up, we have Bruce Morton. 3 minutes, Bruce.
So Bruce Morton, 11222 Vernon Road. I'm here to talk about 2 issues I saw on the agenda. First, the flock cameras. I already talked about that. I don't want to reiterate everything that I've talked about before. It looks like you're about to pass a budget to add these in our city. If you insist on adding these cameras, I want to remind you of the recommendations that the ACLU has for those cities that are using it. First, data retention should be changed from 30 days to 3 minutes. Second, data sharing should be restricted to only local use. And third, that the city should only use local watch lists, not those from outside jurisdictions. I did some more reading on the usage of flock cameras and cities comparable size. And yes, the initial proposal is 6 cameras, but that is just the camel's nose under the tent. Other cities are having 40 or more of these cameras, these surveillance cameras all over their cities. And that will increase the costs because the police constantly want to know more and more and see more and more. And it's never going to be enough because the camera is fixed and they want to see everything. And you're going to end up with costs into the hundreds of thousands a year. Secondly, I want to talk about this fireworks ban that you're considering. I oppose restricting fireworks in the city. Me and my family have enjoyed living here and seeing the fireworks over the lake and in the neighborhoods. It's a lot of fun. You are not my mommy and dad. Please don't treat us like children. I'm an adult. I can make decisions on what risks I'm willing to take. Now, if you have concerns about children getting hurt, then make a law that protects children, that restricts them from being able to use them unsupervised. If you're worried about the mess that happens on cul-de-sacs, then make it illegal to leave a mess. But the people have spoken. There was a ballot issue on this just a few years ago. And what was the result? Keep fireworks legal. I ask you to respect the voice of the people and maintain our rights. And finally, don't let the irresponsible few dictate what the rest of us get to do. And I invite the youth to express their opinions on surveillance and the rights to use fireworks. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Is there anyone else in the audience who would care to speak tonight? Anyone?
Council President, I do have a hand up now digitally.
Okay,
Take
great.
it.
Can that person identify themselves? and
Yes,
state
it is
whether
Sue
they're resident?
Fernald, and I will bring her in.
Thank you.
Yep. Sue, I have unmuted you. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Sue?
Yes, can you hear me?
Sue Fernald, your hand is up. I've
Yes.
unmuted you. Can you hear us?
No?
I'm hearing that the online, they can hear her, but we can't. The online participants can hear her, but we can't. Barb is telling me she can hear.
She can hear us.
Barb is telling me she can hear Sue, but we can't hear Sue. She denied it. Sorry. I'm trying to bring her in and I allowed her to talk.
Can you
Just
hear
to
me
find out.
now?
Yeah. I did. I did. I can continue to work with Sue offline here and then bring her back in, and let you know when she's ready.
Okay,
You want to keep going?
yeah, why don't we skip forward then?
Oh, I'm sorry, Barb. Hold on just a second. Barb is asking to join. Barb, are you there? Barb, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
can
we're
you
not
hear
hearing
me?
Barb either, Troy.
I can, Sue, I can hear you. They
Okay.
can't
All right,
hear
go
me.
ahead.
Why
and keep
don't-
going.
Yeah,
I'll
we'll
work with it.
technical difficulties here. Let's move on to council business. And how about we start out with Councilmember Ewing?
Thank you. Just wanted to report just a little bit on our DC trip. Last week we were in Washington DC, meeting with our elected officials on their home turf. I do say a couple takeaways, especially for the youth that are here. So Rick Larson's in the second congressional district, represents Everett on the other side of the trestle, and Susan O'Benny represents us. Maybe he's in the first and we're in the second. I got this mixed up. I know, but in talking about trying to get funding for the trestle, I was really impressed with how the coordination between those two offices, between those two elected representatives trying to help us with the funding for that. And also, with regard to, we met with Cantwell's office, Senator Cantwell's office, Senator Murray, and Susan Del Bene. And I will just say, I hope people will look beyond some of the national issues that tend to get people worked up as far as things that relate to local stuff, especially to Lake Stevens and Snohomish County. These elected officials are doing an outstanding job of representing us, particularly Susan Del Bene. I mean, she is very much in the details of what's going on, has been with our mayor to tour parts of the city. She is very involved. And so I'm not endorsing anything to do like a candidacy or anything. I just want to recognize and acknowledge how much that benefits us. And I will say at the local level, if people will step aside from partisanship, John Lovick, Jared Mead, Steve Hobbs, who were in the 44th, all Democrats, represented us extraordinarily well. We're now in the 39th with all Republicans. And Senator Wagner and Representatives Eslick and Legg also represented us extremely well in that capacity. So I think if people focus on the things that are representing Lake Stevens and Snohomish County and how that's benefiting us, our city staff and council have worked well. Our trip to DC was a good example of that collaborative working together despite some issues that there may be on different subjects. That's it for me.
Thank you. Councilmember Georgestad.
Thank you. Just also want to comment on some of my takeaways on the trip to DC. You know, we go as the city of Lake Stevens and we have specific areas of focus. To me, one of the highlights was meeting with the Department of Transportation and talking specifically about our lake and our culvert issues and a couple of bridges that we have that need some attention, and really having someone talk to us about funding streams that maybe we're not aware of, technical assistance that's available through the Federal Department of Transportation, a way to work better with the tribes and the Department of Transportation tribal liaison to talk about some of our fish bearing streams and the work that we're doing to try to move those streams around a little bit and better provide fish passage through our lake. It provides a different lens and a bigger kind of global perspective, I think, than sometimes we have here in our own city. So that was super helpful. It was also really interesting traveling with the city of Monroe and hearing about Highway 2. We talk a lot about the trestle and how the trestle impacts our ability to move back and forth, but listening to the city of Monroe talk about further east, what their Highway 2 situation is, the difficulties they have just in moving throughout their city because of some of their struggles. And then on east, looking at the Highway 2 corridor and problems with just getting goods and services back and forth along our state. Again, it really sort of broadens the perspective and hopefully helps us all work together to tackle what is a bigger issue than just the trestle. So really appreciated the opportunity. I just was involved in some really great conversations. I learned a lot about our state, about this area of the city, and appreciate the support in being able to make that trip. So thank you. That's all.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Shipman.
Well, Angie and Steve covered DC very well. I just want to say I was honored to be there. It was my first time at DC or in DC, and the support we felt from our representatives and the knowledge they already knew before we got there. So we were bringing information to them, but they already knew, they had already looked into it. They've already been researching it. I felt very supported. And so I was grateful to be there. I think Steve and Angie hit all the highlights. I just like to add, I want to thank Caitlin. She kept us all on task and kept us all organized. There were a lot of moving parts and several people there. So I want to thank Caitlin for all her help this trip. And then yesterday I was at the Senior Center board meeting. So I have a little update from them. They did have their Cinco de Mayo fundraiser and they raised $1,900. And so they consider that a huge success. They had 73 people come. And I don't know if you've ever been to the senior center. It's not a very big space. So 73 people is a pretty full house. Just a couple things they have coming up. On June 23rd, they do plan on participating in the Lake Stevens Health and Wellness Fair. Their main purpose is to get word out that they're there. They still very much feel like they're kind of this little hidden gem in Lake Stevens, and a lot of people aren't aware that they're there, the things that they do. They have so many activities. They're really a great way to, gather all of our communities together, but especially our seniors. And you just have to be 55 or above to join. They are also hosting an opioid and Narcan info class. It's on Wednesday, June 5th, and they wanted me to let everyone know that the public is welcome. This day and age, that's some important information to keep our friends and family safe. They're also hosting a Lake Stevens PD theft prevention and education. And that's going to be a lunch, and that's on June 18th. They also wanted to invite the public to that. They really would like to see us all join together with them on these subjects. They're getting closer and closer to their 500 participant number. They're up to 299. So again, their goal is to have 500 people to participate by the end of the year so they can qualify for a grant. And just a couple of things, they had 435 volunteer hours in April, and they served 409 meals. So they're a busy group and a happy group, and I encourage you all to visit them. That's it.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Donahue.
Yes, thank you. So unfortunately this year I was not able to go to DC, but I was glad to hear that we were well represented both at the state and city level. I did attend the Planning Commission meeting back on the 1st. The march through the comprehensive plan update continues. Another great presentation, boiling it all down by Senior Planner Levitan. This one focused on the update to Chapter 4, which is the environment and natural resources element of the plan, as well as updates to the critical area ordinances. Chapter 4 establishes the policy framework and protection for the protection and enhancement of the physical environment and natural resources in Lake Stevens, and the updates to that chapter this year focus on addressing climate change, improving equity, and utilizing best available science. Similarly, the updates to the critical area ordinances focus on updating the best available science. And the two ordinances that fall under that category are the city's shoreline master program, which covers any areas that fall under the jurisdiction of the Shoreline Management Act, and then also the critical area ordinance. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Daughtry.
I have nothing. Thank you.
And I'll just reiterate the comments about Washington, DC. I think the meetings were very helpful. We continue to bang the drum, so to speak, regarding the trestle over and over. And so hopefully at some point in time, we will make a little more headway than what we're making right now. I did receive a message. I think we're looking to have a presentation from WashDOT in July, approximately, about what is going on right now with their studies and so forth. So
June 18th.
Pardon?
June 18th.
June. Okay.
That's what we're shooting for.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can get some current information on that and continue that process. So with that,
Council President, can we try again? I think we fixed the audio issue. Okay.
yeah, I was going to jump back to.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So,
Barb, I'm going to use you as a test. Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, great. Sue Fernald, I hope you're still there. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, great. You've got 3 minutes to address the council.
So I'm calling about, Sue Fernald, Lake Stevens. I'm calling about the fireworks. In 2021, this was on the ballot. 52% of the citizens said yes, keep them. 48% said no. So my question is, I know you can't answer. I'd like to see the 4% people, letters, text that have written in since then that said they want to be no. I think that when there's something on the ballot, to take it away for the people that voted yes, you're going to have angry people. But if you can show where since then you've had tremendous increased letters, texts, whatever, since the 7 of you represent all of us, not just the people that have called in to you. So that's my concern.
Thank you, Sue.
Any other folks online?
That's it.
Okay. With that, that concludes council business, city department report. I don't believe there's anything on that. Okay. Consent agenda. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We have a consent agenda approval. Action items. Do you want to take the, do we want to do the public meeting guidelines first?
Sure.
Yeah. So I thought, I think that we had discussed on this 3 weeks ago. Missing 2 of our council meetings. I know you guys had fun in DC, but I was waiting for a council meeting. And I was like, anyway, we had talked about where we talk about not being able to add time based on somebody trying to talk about the same thing over and over and over again, so they could conglomerate that in and increase the time. And I thought that we had landed on that you could have a group of people with one spokesman and would go for 5 minutes.
That's my recollection. We got an email from a citizen that has been paying attention and reminded us of that. And so I would support that. So instead of hearing the same thing, people reading the same letter for 3 minutes over and over, that we have one person that can represent a group of people. I would support that.
Well, I would move to amend what has been put in before us for an action item now, to amend it to have that codified into this and with that amendment, approve it.
So I have another issue that when council president's ready for that.
Sure, certainly.
So my concern, I think I think there's a good attempt at making just, focus, limiting the comments and what's considered inappropriate. I think in the last 4 years, there have been too many meetings where I've heard direct comments directed to the council that would be considered hate speech if it were directed towards another class within the same group. And so I think it's just too easy for people, if there's not things that are specifically called out as already felony behavior. But I think it needs to be spelled out explicitly so that whoever is presiding over the meeting can identify it specifically and saying that's inappropriate behavior. So you're making a comment based on someone's gender identity or expression, or someone's race, or someone's whatever. And I have some language here that I would, that's already used in some other organizations to call out that type of hate speech that is unfortunately all too common. And seems to be increasingly encouraged in this setting. So something that prohibits comments based on race, creed, color, sex, national origin, marital status, status of the state registered domestic partnership, disability, veteran status, genetic information, gender identity, or expression. And Greg, you can correct me if I missed any that are protected under federal or state law. But I can identify at least 4 of those groups where I've heard things directed at council members repeatedly in public comment. And I would be fine if those comments weren't directed at me or my fellow council members.
So would you want to add that maybe to that first bullet point under
Correct.
the meeting structure?
Yeah, we have to be careful how our problem is, of course, we're a public entity and you're public officials. And we have to take some heat. We have to take some heat that other people don't have to take in other settings. And our courts have been pretty clear in cases that have been brought to it that you can have people in the audience who say some harsh things to you. But that's not reason to make them stop talking. Because a comment may have some infliction of race or sex or other thing, that doesn't necessarily make it speech that you can say, we can't hear. I don't want to hear it. And that a broadly worded people can't talk about any of those subject matters goes too far. Yeah, I think you're going to cross into restraint on First Amendment protected speech by doing that. The policy as written, it prohibits personal attacks, which is different than just speech. Okay, if somebody wants to come here and they want to talk about fireworks, whether we should have fireworks or not, they can say all sorts of things about that subject matter. But if they start to say, you council member Ewing, you lousy SOB, you have done this, that's strained from the subject matter that we can somewhat control. But I hesitate to think that we can include that broad kind of language in this policy and not step on First Amendment protected speech.
So you're telling me that I can engage in hate speech. If I engage in that same conduct outside of a council meeting, I could be brought up on criminal charges.
Well,
telling me that
no,
that's
no, no.
allowed in a council setting. I find that incredible.
Hate speech, okay, if there's speech that violates the criminal law, that's already prohibited. Okay, I mean, if we want to put in here speech that violates, and we can cite the statutes or whatever, but that's already against the law. We don't need to add that to this policy. It's not going to add anything. It's not going to do anything.
So if something's included in there that says, or other behavior that is already protected by state or federal
Right.
law.
Yeah.
Because I think it's more for the presiding authorities. They have something, the council president and the mayor that's moderating that. So they have something a little more concrete, especially if the person presiding supports the views of those comments being directed towards people, then that makes it even more challenging because they may be disinclined to moderate that.
Well, if, any one of you have the right as a council member to make a motion, right, to kind of stop what's going on. And if there's enough of you that support that motion, it doesn't take the chair to gavel it down. You as a group can decide to do that if you think that that's a situation that's occurring, that the mayor should be graveling. Council president, who's ever presiding, is not doing what they should do. You as a body can address that issue. But my only concern is I think we have to be careful in this policy that we keep it acknowledging the First Amendment as it is, and what the courts have said, you as a council can say no to, and which you can't say no to. Certainly illegal speech that's prohibited by law, you can say no to. But if it goes that far, offensive speech that simply offends you or voices a point of view that you don't like, you have to hear it.
Yeah, I'm not talking about offensive behavior. I'm talking about criminal behavior. And so I've just noticed that. I've noticed there have been at least 4 different topics that have been covered in, time been in council, and it seems to be increasing. And it seems to be increasingly coordinated. And so that's where I'm coming. I don't want to be the only one speaking if there's no other concerns from council and everyone else. I might be the lone wolf here. But I would like there to be a little more appropriate dialogue. And I can just say that I find it ironic that Jared Mead and Nate Naring get a lot of targeted attention, county council representatives for working coordinatedly because they represent different sides of the aisle. They work together. They get hit from both sides of the aisle and people target them with some not illegal speech, but because they want to work together. And I think there needs to be more coordinated people agreeing to work on topics instead of, yeah, but we can't control that. We can't control that type of
No.
dialogue.
I mean, we could call out speech that is recognized by statute as quote, hate speech. But that's very limited. It's very narrow. And if you want me to try to do that, I can do that, but just a general, you can't talk about, including your speech, these particular topics. We can't do that.
Councilmember Ewing, I appreciate your comments and I know where you're coming from. I guess I would say that maybe this suggested language, I guess, is maybe just that, and let's see how it works. The idea is, I thought we were going to maybe have some handouts and so forth to kind of set the tone. And I would hope that somebody reading this before talking would maybe think twice, I guess, rather than getting into specific type things. But I know where you're coming from. I mean, we were all subject to that last year, so I don't know what your.
I was gonna say, I would just
Councilmember
add,
thoughts are, but-
you know, I think this is a great jumping off point, although I do think we should have the 5 minute, like we have a group of people that want to get together and have a representative speak to us, give them 5 minutes instead of 3. I remember us discussing that, and I think that's a great idea. From a little bit of a different perspective, as I'm new to council, I've been sitting out there before when some of these things have been happening and I felt unsafe in the room. I felt like I wasn't even planning to speak. You know, I didn't turn in a green sheet or anything. I was just at the meeting. But had I planned to speak and maybe had a different perspective, I would not have felt safe sharing it. And for me, that's the bigger concern. I mean, we've all got pretty broad shoulders up here. You can't, you know, run for a political office and not get some thick skin. But people sitting out there coming to talk to us or to listen to what we're bringing forward should feel safe doing that. And there were times I did not feel safe. And I think that's what I would like this to really kind of be directed at.
I do
Other
think,
thoughts,
oh,
comments?
yeah, I do think it's important that we do everything that we can in developing guidelines to ensure that everyone feels safe speaking their mind. And I think there are topics that get heated and it makes that tricky, but I think that we have a responsibility to create an atmosphere where whether it's fireworks, whether it's Pride, whether it's Costco, whether it's anything that is dividing our community, that we create an atmosphere where we are open to hearing all sides coming forth. I think it's important to remember that hate speech, there are many, you know, kind of loosely similar definitions, but it is based on attacking a protected attribute. And you listed, I think, that the areas of protection very clearly. And, you know, that we have a mechanism where we won't tolerate that once it starts happening. Once someone is targeting someone who is protected, a protected class, we have a responsibility to call that out. Greg, I appreciate you speaking towards the sort of what we're able to do legally. Just a really quick Google search states that hate speech in the United States cannot be directly regulated by the government due to the fundamental right to freedom of speech protected by the Constitution. While hate speech is not a legal term in the United States, the US Supreme Court has repeatedly ruled that most of what would qualify as hate speech in other Western countries is legally protected speech under the First Amendment.
Right. I mean, a lot of definitions of hate speech is basically speech that's offensive. It, you don't want to hear, that make you feel unsafe or unprotected. But as Councilmember Jorstad just said, our courts have still been protective of that kind of speech. I mean, if that kind of speech starts to talk, there's nothing, or go on, there's nothing that prohibits the chair to ask the person to direct their comments more at the subject matter, to try to deal with the situation. But we can't turn the mic off. We can't kick the person out of the meeting, and sometimes you just have to sit there with your arms crossed and thanks, and your 3 minutes are up, and that's the end of it.
So Greg, I have to respectfully disagree. I've watched the police chief escort people off the lectern multiple times for inappropriate speech as directed by the mayor. And so prior to being here. And I will say, I find it ironic. And for those that are here, I work in a prison. I work with convicts. I work with the most dangerous people that you can meet. And I am regularly on the receiving end of much more significant things that were to happen here. So just to be clear, but I find it ironic that the felons that I work with are held to a significantly higher standard of conduct than what has happened here. And I said, they have the same First Amendment rights. I said, they are not allowed to make most of the comments that I hear on certain subjects without being subject to significant consequences. And so I just find it ironic. I said, they have the same First Amendment rights. And I find that they show more respect and restraint in discussing sensitive topics than many of the people that come and share their views. So maybe it says that they have people of higher morals and integrity. I don't know. But I just would like a little more, something along the lines of the short-term rental was a heated topic, probably the most recent heated subject in the community. And I really respect the differing views of the people that spoke passionately and respectfully, but we're also on very different ends of the spectrum. I don't think there was a time where people felt unsafe sharing conflicting views, even though it was a very contentious subject. So that's the type of dialogue, while I can't control that would be appropriate to have very passionate debate, but not to the extent that seems to be topics of discussion that we're having in the city.
Any other comments?
Council President, we've got a motion on the floor from Councilmember Daughtry, and I didn't hear a second.
There was not a second.
Okay.
So can you repeat your motion?
It was to add the 5 minutes for group
Yeah.
discussion, for group representation. That's what it said.
5 minutes for group representation to add it, and then if that is agreed upon, then to approve the public comment, public meeting guidelines.
So I will second that. I agree with Councilmember Shipman's position. I just want to point things out. I hope that there is a different discussion. We can always revisit it if we find that we're not having the impact as we desire. But I thank you, Councilmember Shipman, for your thoughts on that.
I'll just say we're at the discussion point of that. Yes.
Sure.
I'm not super supportive of that. And my concern is that if one person has decided they're going to represent a group of people and they have their 5 minutes, but there are other people that didn't know that representation was happening and they came to speak their 3 minutes and now they can't because this person has deemed themselves, or maybe a group of people has deemed that person to be the speaker for the group. I think it runs the risk of people not having their 3 minutes. So that's.
We're
don't-
not limiting anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think the case in point is if you had a homeowners association or something, they had an attorney for some reason, they would speak on the behalf of those people. If there's somebody within that group that says, he doesn't represent my views, I don't see why we wouldn't give them 3 minutes.
Okay, that I think that clarification is helpful. If other members, let's say HOAs, I think is a great example. if other members of the HOA are still able to have their 3 minutes despite someone having 5 minutes who represents that group, then I'm,
Yeah. Is it an organized group that you're thinking of? I mean, there are some people who will come here, well, I talked to 10 people in my neighborhood. And I want to speak for all of them, so I want 5 minutes. Or as opposed to say the person that comes that I represent the Home Builders Association of Snohomish County or something like that.
So,
Are we making a distinction that way or?
so when someone comes up and speaks, they have to say their name and whether they're a citizen here and if they live within the city limits. So if they're speaking for a group, but then also say, I'm speaking for this person, this person, this person, and this person. So it can't be a blanket. Maybe they're not really speaking for a group, but they're kind of saying they're speaking for, like kind of what you were saying, but I wouldn't want it to then limit anyone else who's speaking on the same subject. I wouldn't want it to limit if there were 5, green cards or green sheets that, people had filled out, that even if it's all on the same, they should all be able to talk. I mean, I think I misunderstood if I thought there was only.
No,
one
that's
person
not
could talk.
so like Eric Turner did a great job representing the last land use action that we had with the city. He spoke on behalf of the people. And so they essentially appointed him to speak on their behalf. And he didn't identify all the people, but there were several people here that were with his group supporting him. He spoke, and in that case, he should have, in my view, should have had more time than 3 minutes because he was the one that was kind of their spokesperson. I think that's what we're talking about. If any of the other people wanted to speak on it, they were welcome to do so.
Yeah, so I guess you'd probably classify him as a representative or a recognized representative of the group.
Yeah. We had it with the short-term rentals. We
Yeah.
had several people that spoke on behalf of groups of people, but there were like 3 or 4 different people that had similar views that shared.
Right.
Same point.
that clarification is helpful. Thank you.
Personally, I see this as potentially being very hard to police and regulate. I think kind of to Greg's point, how do you define a group and is there potential for abuse there to milk a couple extra minutes? That being said, I don't know that this is a huge deal. I'm open to try it. And if we find that it's, everyone's finding a way to get 5 minutes, then we change it back.
It's been the exception, I think, over the years that we've had
Yeah. So
issues of Costco's my big one. I
Yeah.
mean, we just, had a room full of people. Everybody wanted to talk. We were there all night.
the other thing too, Greg, I'm curious, is there anything prohibiting, a council member from making a motion to extend someone's time if it's a particular case? So, I mean, we do have
No,
a
you-
mechanism for that.
It's your meeting.
Yeah.
You certainly have the right to do that.
We've done it in the past.
And
Yeah.
you've done that in the past.
Someone makes a motion.
The public looks at you to act in a fair manner to the public. So you just need to administer that fairly.
Okay.
And there's no problem with that.
But yeah, if we want to make the default, a group representative gets 5 minutes, then we can try it.
I would suggest we move this forward and just try it. And if we got problems, we'll make adjustments. I mean, it's kind of been the rare occasion where we had some issues. So I would hope that maybe handing these guidelines out to the public, they'd read them and kind of, oh, these are the parameters we need to operate in, that, things would maybe
Right
kind of,
now, there's nothing, right? We don't
Right.
have any guidelines. right
yeah,
now,
it's just
correct?
decorum. I mean,
Yeah, so I think this is a great jumping. off.
Yeah, so.
So are you okay with staff just adding that in here, or do you want to talk about what the language?
The
was?
5 minutes?
Yeah.
No,
So keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'm kind of got a space issue here, but maybe saying, and then if you are representing a group, keep it to 5 minutes.
Correct.
Okay.
Everybody nod their head on that? We don't
Mhm.
need a separate
Okay.
motion for that, do we? Okay. So with that, I guess you made a motion to include that.
He seconded.
Okay, so I guess all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then all those in favor of adopting this public meeting guidelines, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous.
Did we have a motion for that too?
Oh,
No, because I put it in my motion.
Okay, so your motion covered both.
Yes.
Okay.
We're covered, Mr. Attorney.
I'm just making sure Kelly, we're not making life difficult for Kelly.
Appreciate it.
And Greg didn't jump on me, so.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on, purchase of the 2202 Hartford Drive property. Shannon?
Hi, I'm Olin Anderson,
Okay.
actually representing the Public Works Department. I'm the surface water coordinator. I work with Shannon Ferrant, the surface water manager. We have moved forward on several property acquisitions last year and into this year on Hartford Drive for the overall perspective and purpose of improving potential flood control, stream habitat restoration, and general improvement of this corridor for the city. It will also help the drainage of the lake and manage flooding in the downtown area, if all goes well through the long-term plans we're developing. So last year we learned of some opportunities to purchase properties, and we also learned of an opportunity to get grant funds to buy these from the Conservation Futures Program run by this Snohomish County. And we were awarded funds and have actually moved forward on purchasing 5 parcels on 2 sites. Those on this map are the ones that are in the center and the one over to the right. The actual first parcel we were interested in is a key piece to where we're thinking of having a bridge across Hartford Drive for the future channel. And it has a greenhouse on it right now, and it's vacant. We finally have negotiated a closing cost of a purchase price of $135,000 and plus closing costs. And so we are requesting now, as we have kind of got to the point, we're requesting now to authorize the mayor to sign and execute a purchase and sale agreement for 2202 Hartford Drive for the price of $135,000 plus closing costs. I'm available for questions, but that's what we're asking for tonight.
Okay, great. I'm assuming you've all had a chance to read your packet. We'll do a motion, hopefully, to approve this purchase, and then we'll discuss it. If there's any questions. I have one question, so. Can I get a motion to approve this?
Motion.
Move to approve the purchase of 2202 Hartford Drive.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Purpose of discussion. Anyone have any questions? I do have one, but. Hopefully, Olin, maybe Greg, you can clarify to me, section 8.1. I've never seen a purchase and sale agreement that says closing is to occur as soon as reasonably possible after the buyer gives seller notice that is satisfied the suitability of the condition of the property or the contingency period is waived by buyer. This, the way I read this, could go on forever. Is there not a drop dead date some point in time?
I don't think that's going to be an issue in this particular.
You're our attorney, Greg. That's not a good
Well,
answer from an
you
attorney.
could add, yeah, within 7 days or 14 days. I think the parties here to this particular transactions are both eager just to get this done. And
I totally recognize that, but that's not what it says here in writing. So
there's inherent in there is some good faith by the seller. I think he's getting very excited to get this deal closed.
okay, I'd like to see.
That's what I've heard. He's an interested seller.
So I don't think that's going to be an issue here. Normally, we wouldn't use this language, this kind of loose language.
Oh, you admit that it's loose. Okay,
It is
thank you.
loose.
I appreciate that.
It is loose, and there's no particular, this particular purchase doesn't involve a situation where there's a practical necessity to have a certain number of days or date specified here.
What would be the downside of making that specific and putting a specific number of days or date? Why wouldn't we
Well,
just?
there's no particular downside, although now I guess if you did that, if we added but no later than, and put a date there. As long as the buyer, again, was agreeable to that amendment, no problem. If you really want to do it, we can do that.
Would it take longer to add that in and get it all checked off than it would to just close the deal under the current wording?
Yeah,
Well, I don't
no,
know.
it
They
wouldn't.
could probably.
We
do
got
it.
60
They
day
could probably do it
feasibility.
the same day.
You got a 60-day feasibility, so.
Okay, so we've got
I-
at least 60 days.
Contract law, it's like you gotta have an end date some point in time, and I reasonably possible after the buyer gives the seller notice, reasonably.
Who decides what's reasonably?
All right.
I mean,
If you want to add,
if it came down to it, there are ways to determine what's reasonable. That's not as loose of a term as it might seem, but yeah,
A date's.
a
easier
date
to
is better,
define.
yes.
A date is much easier to define. I would request we put a date in there. So everybody knows what the closing date is.
Well, we had that issue with the property we had in the city that extended for 18 months.
Exactly.
You know,
I wasn't
so
gonna mention.
I would support that.
I would support that too.
Right.
I would ask 15 days after waiver of feasibility.
okay.
Is
Is
that,
that-
I mean,
is that
that
a
gives
motion?
everybody enough time. It gives escrow and,
Are you making a motion?
sure, I'll make a motion. That we add to the closing date, section 8.1, that the purchase sale be closed at title company's office or the location agreed. No later than 15 days after the release of feasibility study by the seller, by the purchaser, or
Second,
the buyer in this case.
second.
All those in favor of that modification?
Aye.
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 And all those in favor of moving forward with this transaction, allowing the mayor to sign it? Aye.
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 There you go.
Thank you.
All right.
Did we have,
That was the first motion was to move this, but then we had a discussion and he amended it. We did the amendment and then we did the original motion.
do we need to modify the motion as amended?
No.
Okay.
We all clear? Okay, cool.
Wait a minute. Is everybody else clear about this? Anybody got any questions?
Robert's rules.
Are you high schoolers learning anything tonight?
Parliamentary procedure in.
Parliamentary
process.
procedures.
So, Councilor, can I just make one comment on this property or deal? So one of the things that came up in our discussion, DC, is how many times we were asked, what is your relationship with the tribes? We were asked time and time again, and because of our good working relationship with the tribes, we've been able to accomplish much more within the city, especially with our lake and outflow, than we would otherwise. And so I'm appreciative of the mayor and the city staff and their outstanding efforts to work effectively with our local tribes and working together for water quality and everything else.
Good comment, So next on the agenda, flock safety, Chief Bezos.
I'm deferring to Commander Thomas.
Thanks, Chief.
Is,
He's back there.
he's back here. There he is. Do you want to come up to the podium?
I will absolutely love to.
I would just bring her in just in case.
Chris McLeod from Flock Safety is online for the online audience, and she could also answer any questions that you may have, any concerns. I think I could probably get the bulk of those. So I am here to answer any questions, tell you more about it. I know you guys had a presentation back in September. So let me know if you want me to expand on that, whatever you guys want.
I have a question for you.
Mhm.
In the memo from Chief Bezos, it talks about the technology is also different because it captures motion and not just license plates. What does that mean?
Well, so these are truly fixed license plate readers. One thing a little different about it, and Kristen can, if she wants to chime in as well, is if we have a specific vehicle, it can't be like black Ford Explorer, there's a million of them, right? But if we have a white truck, black hood, it will notify us that a camera had captured that. All of these cameras are rear facing. It just gets rear of the vehicle. It's never front. And the vast majority of the time, it's the cone of the camera doesn't reach that far. It's right around 25 feet that they could capture. So that is a lane essentially, because obviously it has to be off the roadway. So that is a big feature that this has, as opposed to old school just license plate readers like we used to have on our traffic unit.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council members?
Yes. So I'll preface this and try and spare you. I have a somewhat technical question I think will probably be better directed at the flock rep. But if you want to tackle it, please go ahead. So I have a little bit of experience in machine learning models and their training. And I know that in order to improve systems like that, you need training data and data sets. And so I'm curious what I know data retention has been an issue that's been brought up, and I completely understand the need for it in terms of an investigation, but I am curious what sort of access and use Flock has regarding the data in terms of training their models to improve their camera system.
So Flock, with that said, right? Flock will get the same exact data that we would get if we pull the data. And when I say we pull the data, that means the picture, right? It's just the picture. So they would get the picture of the license plate, the rear of the vehicle, and a time and date stamp. That's all. They don't even get the camera location if it was in Washington State or Alabama. Why they do this, if there's a new vehicle coming online, like a new Rivian or something, that camera at some point has to learn that this is a new car out there. So that is essentially why they will keep and capture until all the cameras are trained on that new vehicle.
I'll jump in there too, Commander. So hi everyone, my name's Kristen McLeod. I'm a community engagement manager with Flock Safety. Thank you for your time this evening. Just to kind of piggyback on what Commander was saying, you may see in our contract that there is, we do keep less than 1% of anonymized data. And that is exactly for what the council member mentioned, to train our machines to accurately identify those vehicle features so that it provides law enforcement a tool to be able to search those features. All of that data is scrubbed of metadata. So Flock would not even actually know where the image is coming from, what jurisdiction or which customer that the image is coming from. It's solely to train our machines to, again, identify that new feature, that type of vehicle accurately.
Is the training process supervised? Is there a human involved in reviewing the training?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And so when it's anonymized and scrubbed of metadata, so say, for example, it snaps a picture of a car. In the picture, someone was clearly visible, not intentionally. The focus is on some aspect of the car, but you can see a person. How is that handled?
So in our system, again, when we're using the images to train the machine learning, like you said, there may be, because our cameras are motion activated, if a car were to drive by at the same time that someone was walking by the camera and happened to be captured in the image, the person who is providing quality assurance on that machine learning piece of it may see that there is a person in the image, but would have no location information as to where that image came from. And then Flock does not have any sort of facial recognition within our systems at all. The data is 100% owned by our customers. Flock will never sell or share it. So really, and there is no way to search for a person. Law enforcement does not even have that capability to search for a person within the system.
Okay. Forgive me if this is a crude comparison. Would it be fair to say then that my image, say I'm captured in there, there's less about me, being viewed by someone I don't know than say with like a Google Maps streetcar catching me, because I know those are posted online and people are blurred out. But in this case, it sounds like I'd be in there, but no one knows who I am. It would never leave Flock. Law enforcement, you said, wouldn't be able to use it to search for me. So I guess that's kind of how I'm analogizing it in my mind.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I have a question about oversight. I'm used to working in government entities and there's lots of checks and balances. We have some oversight over our city law enforcement. You're responsible to WASPIC and other entities that may come in and audit the work that you do. I'm curious to know, given that Flock is a private company, what type of oversight exists around the decisions that you make within your company?
It's a great question. So, for example, with our data retention, we utilize Amazon Web Services as our cloud-based server that holds your data. They have a policy, and we conduct random internal audits to assure that that data is being deleted at the 30-day mark.
How about, you just mentioned that you have a policy where you will never sell or share data that you have. What about making the decision to change that policy? How is that just an internal decision that you would make? Do you have a board of directors? Do you have an oversight entity that could determine whether or not those are policies that you could change at any time?
That's a great question. And in fact, it's not a policy, but in fact, in the contract that we have with our customers, that Flock will never sell or share your data. And that the data is 100% owned by you.
And what are the terms of the contract in terms of either party being able to make changes to that contract? Is there a way to give notice to say we're gonna make this change, or how does that work?
It's mutual. We both have to agree. It has to be in writing.
Thank you.
So how long, the initial period of this contract is a 2-year lease period? And then is it renewed annually? Or to address Councilmember Jorstad's question, if there are changes that we agree to, or, we have conflict with or something, could we end that? Is it a 5-year contract or is?
It's every 2.
So it's a
it's
2-year
2 year, yep.
period. So you're kind of stuck with things for 2 years then.
Sorry, I have a follow-up question. The 30-day retention period, does that also apply for, so the training, is it all based off the same image? So like the machine learning models are trained off of the image that law enforcement would view. And once that image is scrubbed, it's no longer available for investigations or training, or is it copied into a separate set where it's then scrubbed? And how does that work? Is it the same image?
So it would be the same. Once that image life cycle hits that 30-day mark, it's hard deleted and unrecoverable. So we're working within that 30-day.
For both training and for law enforcement access?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Dean, you might want to mention the Arlington thing that you sent to them already.
Yeah. So I sent everybody on council a transparency model that Arlington uses, and it's a Flock safety model that it's right on their website, Arlington, and anybody could click that link and it shows how many images were captured, how many cameras there are, Flock policy, all that stuff that anybody could look at. This is not a secret squirrel mission. This is kind of a force multiplier for investigative purposes only. Everybody, I think, has heard about if a robbery happens or a homicide, that we put out be on the lookout for a BOLO, right? We do that over the air. Well, with this capability, we could actually put that information into the system just like we would, and then Flock acts as our BOLO. So, which is, you know, right now is kind of going down the corridor here that Arlington has several cameras, Marysville has several, hopefully we will have several, 6. Everett is looking to get several. So Arlington has assisted in 3 homicides with Flock Safety. That, you know, somebody had asked, hey, can you check your database for this license plate? And they were able to prove that, you know, this car was going through the city at whatever date and time. And they found one of their vehicles for one of their homicides as well, so.
So are we planning on putting something like this on our website?
Absolutely.
What is your sort of longer range goal about how many cameras ideally you'd like to have total?
With technology is our friend. I would much rather have more technology out there than having my guys chasing people and having people get closure to crimes. There are so many stolen vehicles out there that are just not recovered. It's unreal the amount of stolen vehicles just Arlington has recovered. They've recovered more in the last 6 months than they had in the last 3 years combined. I would say for public use more than as much as law enforcement, right, for that closure, especially violent crimes. And I know in years past, I was a detective, but if we had this tool, it would be huge just to give us a timeline of when they left the city or when they came into the city.
But do you have a number kind of in mind of what your ideal number of cameras in the city of Lake Stevens would be?
We're kind of unique because we are surrounded by highways and SR 204, 92, and 9. There's some challenges with that being on WSDOT land. But with city, I think 6 is good to see how you guys like it and we like it. I'm very positive that it's going to be a great thing for us, for the city. I couldn't give you an exact number right now. These, you know, when we look at the map and kind of plan the cameras, like we said, we're looking for people coming and going, entering the city, exiting the city, stuff like that. So other agencies use it in parking lots. You know, how great it would be we have so much retail theft up at Frontier Village, to have a camera at Frontier Village. Somebody gives us a license plate for retail theft, and you know, we have that extra tool. I don't know if anybody knows this, but every Lowe's has a Flock camera in their parking lot. So Everett doesn't have Flock yet, but if the Lowe's is in Everett, there's a Flock camera there. So Lowe's is already on board with this, so.
That's the big camera with the solar shield on it, so forth, that sits in the parking lot with is that?
Well, there's a couple. I know some of them have the blue lights. That's not the same thing generally. So there could be, but yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to gauge is what I understand you can't give a number. I totally get that. But what the budget impact is looking at, like, is it 6 cameras this year and then 6 next year and then 12 the following year and then 15 the year after that and then 20? Like, are we looking at, you know, wanting to exponentially increase year after year? Or has that been discussed?
We have to be, you know, fiscally responsible as well. So I'm not going to ask for the stars, right? No, because I'm invested just like everybody else, like I've told my guys, we get this. I want to utilize it and see the impact it is to our victims out there. So, I would be thrilled if I'm here next year asking for more cameras. That means it's working. So.
Okay, thank you.
So there was a concern by Mr. Morton. It's talking about outside organizations being able to request our data. What's our policy around that?
It's, if we pull data, if we pull an image, we have to store that image. That means it is evidence, that image. So we pulled it for a reason. That's a case report. That's a case number. So if they're asking for something, it will be just like us providing something that we ran on the computer. So everything is CJIS compliant. Everybody that.
What is CJIS?
Do you know the acronym to
Criminal
CJIS?
Justice Information System. It's where it has to be done through State Patrol access. So everything we do is tracked.
So an officer that requests that information, they would have the date, time, login information for whichever officer accessed that information.
Sorry, the login information?
Yeah, whoever's accessing that information,
No,
whoever.
it would be in our case file. So what we're saying is we'd upload the image into Axon Digital evidence, that image of that license plate, and that would go up and they would get access to that case report. So they would just see the engine, the date, time, and license plate. And
What?
then whatever case information they need, they're requesting for our case. Does that answer it? Yes. Okay.
So, oh,
So I don't think I answered my question.
well, sorry, really quick.
I may not have answered it, asked it correctly.
I want to clarify something I heard really quick, just to make sure everyone understands. So people with that state patrol, the CJIS access, they could request and potentially view files that have been pulled from Flock and are part of a case file. They cannot access our Flock data. So it's only once a file or an image has been pulled as part of an active investigation that broader law enforcement can get it. Our Flock cameras, that data is secure to just us until one of you guys pulls it.
Correct.
Okay.
That is our evidence.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And when I say pull data, it is literally the picture and time, date stamp and the camera location for us.
But until you do that, someone from Arlington can't say, hey, I want an image from your Flock data set. It's only once you pull it and put it in a case that.
Yep, and they would ask us.
Okay.
Yep. And Kristen, you could chime in if you want to.
Yeah, I think the important part is that if Lake Stevens PD decides to, number one, you all are in full control of who you would grant access to your data. And that can be done in different levels. So the department could elect to only allow departments to, as Commander was sharing, access the images that they have retained for a criminal investigation. The Flock system would allow Lake Stevens PD to share with other jurisdictions. They would have to grant permission, and you can also give user levels. So it's highly controlled on the end of Lake Stevens. And anyone who accesses the data, so say Lake Stevens PD elects to allow Arlington PD to access the alerts from the Flock camera or search for an image that may have been captured by a Lake Stevens camera, whoever is looking for that information, all of that access is logged in an auditable search history, which is retained indefinitely.
Sorry.
So in other words, it's like if another police agency made a request. Made a request of Lake Stevens Police Department. Hey, look, we don't we're not asking for a particular, we don't have a particular car right now, or particular information that we want you to see, to look at, but we want to be able to access your data. If something happened here, we don't want to have to bother you with it. We want to look at that. they could give permission, right? As I understand that that's the deal, and then it could be vice versa.
Right.
So to the extent that your department does that, do you have criteria for that now, or is that?
It's in our, yeah, it's in our policy. It has to be approved.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
It
It
has to
would,
be approved by the command staff.
Chief, could you speak in the microphone?
Oh, sorry. Yes, it has to be approved by the command staff to share the data. But it would, if Arlington called up and said we needed it, we'd be doing an active case anyways. We'd be doing a case file and a follow-up information with them.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, your policy states that we will not allow access to our data to an outside agency.
Without the chief's approval.
And that would be given for active investigations, not just go search through our flock data. Okay. Also,
And
sorry.
if I could
Go ahead.
add really quick that a search reason is required to access, and that's for any user to access the information. And then that is also information that is in the log of who accessed what information and for what reason.
So on that point, you said the audit records are retained indefinitely. How do you know what they were looking at if the image is scrubbed after 30 days?
So if they're accessing that information for a criminal investigation and downloading that image, there would be a location and a search reason associated with the search.
Okay, so you can audit downloads, but not searches, or how does that work?
I'm sorry, I should clarify. All of the search information would be included in that audit trail.
But only the image if it was downloaded.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
They're essentially looking for if we got, like if Arlington was asking us and if I would approve, they're basically looking for if we had any alerts.
Okay.
Are we going to have to add additional staff? If so, how many?
No,
No?
no.
Anything that should help save us on staff.
I guess I have a question for the detective and you. So I get the law enforcement bulletins where they share the information, and I've been seeing an increasing number of those where those flock contacts are out. A recent one was Arlington, Tenino felony crime was committed, and they were able to track the suspects between Tenino and Arlington, and had developed a pattern and were able to track down the suspect. That's just a one from just recently. But I'm also familiar with cases. I abhor government surveillance, and I share the concerns of the people with that. But I also am aware that if I commit a crime, my device is going to be used, and they can subpoena every text message, every phone call, every ping, me traveling wherever I go, can be subpoenaed. And that information can be subject to scrutiny. And we have recently a national case where someone claimed not to have been to a place, and they were able to say, hey, you've actually been there hundreds of times during the time that people said you were there, the closest cell tower. And so that we are being monitored during COVID. They could tell us which percentage of people were complying with the lockdowns, and they would announce that on national TV, saying X number of people are following that data because they were using cell phone data. So I don't know. The question to you is, how hard is it to obtain a search warrant for someone's device in the event that I commit a crime, you believe I committed? How hard is that to obtain that to track me with my cell phone data?
Well, I could ask for anything, but I still have to have probable cause, and a judge has to.
Assuming that you have probable cause, the judge grants you that. And how hard? T-Mobile is my carrier. How long you contact T-Mobile and say, hey, how hard would it be? What's the time frame for them to provide that data for you?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you. You would have to ask a current detective that would ask for it's not instantaneous. I assure you that.
I get that. I'm just, the reason I'm asking that is these things are time sensitive, and the flock here I'm seeing in these cases, I'm struggling with the rights of civil liberties versus this thing, trying to resolve these crimes that occur. And I don't want to put police in harm's way by having unnecessary contact where they don't have to. And that coordination that I'm seeing between cities it seems to be pretty effective. And so I'm struggling with that, but I just want to see how hard that, I don't know that, that's what I'm asking. I don't know how hard that is to use your phone, because pretty much everyone has a phone and they can track everything that you do on there. So
It, like you say, I mean, we can absolutely go down a rabbit hole with that, with that question, right? It has to be a nexus, you know, to a crime. I just want to stress, this is absolutely a force multiplier. If just because we see a car or our license plate going through the city, it's still upon us to prove that this person was driving this car, right? Right now, it is the car. That's it. It's the license plate in the car. You know, we're stressed. We're not, you know, taking pictures of people. We're taking pictures of cars. So we get, you know, more tools in our tool belt to, like you had said, about tracking somebody's movement from point A to point Z, you know, from city to city or location to location within a city.
and what I see with that is I see that they have probable cause to seize the vehicle. They don't have probable cause to detain anyone in that vehicle. Because they haven't been able to identify based on the flock. They don't have the suspect, but they have the vehicle that was at the place and time of the crime that was committed. But they don't know who definitively was. They don't have probable cause to detain that person. So that's what I'm seeing just in my little world that I see when I peruse those hits bulletins.
Right. And to add a little something, so if a car is entered into the system and it's not just flock system, right? It's our system. As a stolen vehicle. And if we can alert on that and we see the car from flock, right? And it was like, and then we spot the car, we still have to go in and verify that it is stolen. We're not using that image or that alert from flock to stop that car. We are still verifying that we do have a good stolen alert, stolen hit in our law enforcement data system.
So is that the only trigger? Because it's already in the system that would make you look for something in flock?
For flock, yeah, it has to be in the system. Kristen?
And if I can add a little bit to that. So we do have integrations with the National Crime Information Center, which is a database where law enforcement enters in information pertaining to wanted persons and vehicles. We also have a National Center for Missing and Endangered Children. So Amber Alerts are integrated. So if a vehicle is associated with an active Amber Alert, if that vehicle passes by one of the cameras, an alert is sent to the officers within 20 seconds, notifying them that vehicle just passed the camera in your community with that location information, as well as any, you know, state level databases such as silver alerts, that type of thing. So in addition to wanted vehicles associated with crimes, we also are integrated with alerts for missing vulnerable adults as well as children.
The first call in Marysville was an Alzheimer's patient who had left his house driving his vehicle. The vehicle went up on State Avenue 529 into Marysville, and they were alerted by flock and were unable to recover him. Just an FYI.
There's been a lot of great questions here. I believe that the police department is looking for some consensus that to kind of move this process a little bit forward with a contract, as I understand it. And so some of those things that you brought up, Ryan, would be in that that we can fine tune and address more on a specific basis. So that's my understanding. And so if there is a consensus to move forward with that, I guess I would like to hear that.
So I agree. There's, at least for me, I support that. I do expect data that supports justifies what we're doing, because the data doesn't support it, then you know, that's not a good use of resources.
Okay. You want to, Councilman Jorstad, are you thumbs up or?
I am not in support of moving forward.
Okay. Councilmember Shipman,
I'm in support of moving forward.
Councilmember Donahue,
I am, and I guess this brief comment I would make is, we're coming off a period where, as we've seen, hiring qualified, law enforcement personnel is very difficult. And if we're looking at a 2-year cycle on this to try it, I mean, we're taking great steps now with the regional academies and trying to increase that applicant pool. But if this can kind of bridge the gap in the meantime and serve as a test bed, I know there's concerns about privacy, but I think maybe that cat is somewhat out of the bag. And I know there's concern about this opening the door, but that's our responsibility as a council. If in 2 years, this doesn't do what it's supposed to, or if we feel there's some kind of privacy issue, it's on us to close it again. So for 2 years, I'm in favor of this.
Okay. Councilmember Daughtry.
Well, I'd have to agree with what was just said by my colleague here. I'm kind of on the fence about the privacy issue on this as well, but I think that this is not a bad time to have a test of this system and see what it can do for us for the force multiplier type thing. I'm getting a little bit more used to the idea of how this works with the triggers where we actually are using it and what it's going to do for us. So right now I'm okay with it.
I would agree with that. I think it's important that we probably move forward and address some of the very specific things that are in the contract and see what can be worked out. And we don't have a contract yet, so there's still time, I guess. But I would suggest we move forward and start working down that road. So.
And as Steve mentioned, I'd like to see more data, what it's being used for, because what's triggering in my mind, you had mentioned that Alzheimer person, we see teens missing all the time as well. Oftentimes they are seen in a vehicle the last time they're seen. So I would like to see more data on what, how it's helping, what type of crimes it's helping with.
Councilman, if I could bring on that, if they're associated to a vehicle, then we would get the alert. But if that person is in a vehicle, let's say a blue Honda, and that's all we have, we'd have to search every blue Honda to see, license plate and try to follow up on that. If that person is a missing child that's in an ABC 123 vehicle and they gave us that license plate and they're associated to that, then that would trigger that. Does that make it clear? Just because they're missing child and a person in a car we may not get that information unless they're associated with that license plate. So, but we will most definitely keep track of the data to give you back a report within 2 years.
Okay,
We're
so
gonna try to bring this back May 28th,
May 28th,
May 28th meeting.
if that can be done with
Yeah.
the Flock folks and the
Yeah.
police department, I would say, yeah, it'd be great.
Okay.
Is that something that can happen?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, let's get it on the agenda. So. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
With that, on to item 11B, ordinance related to fireworks. City Attorney Stello, excuse me. Greg.
All right, another good subject here, fireworks. First thing I'm going to say is that neither one of the two ordinances that you're looking at tonight ban fireworks in the city of Lake Stevens. Okay, neither one of them address that. Attachment, well, I guess the way they've attached these, attachment 1 is an ordinance that addresses the issue you talked about, but you weren't sure if you had a consensus on this or not. The purpose of the intent of this ordinance is to restrict the usage of and presence of aerial consumer fireworks in the city of Lake Stevens. So to that extent, there is a prohibition on people going to the fireworks stand and buying the Roman candles, the helicopters, the things that go up in the air. So this doesn't totally ban commercial fireworks in consumer fireworks in the city, but it does ban a type of, and so you're going to have further discussion on that. Attachment 2, ordinance number 1180. This is the ordinance that you looked at a month or so ago. It has a few changes to it. It bans the use, discharge, or possession of fireworks in public places. And actually, I see that there's something that should have been deleted that wasn't. It's not consumer fireworks, it is fireworks.
So the word consumer.
In the title should be stricken, right?
Oh, okay.
All right, so, and it addresses all city property, both parks and other city property. Parks is addressed in section 2. Section 1 addresses all other city property. If there's some reason that you only wanted to ban the use, the possession in city parks, we could separate those two out. But there appeared to be consensus in your last discussion that that you were looking to ban the use or discharge and even possession of fireworks on all city property. So that's what ordinance number 1180 does.
But aren't fireworks banned from city parks right now?
They ban, yes, the discharge or the shooting off of fireworks. This would ban the possession. We had discussion about the problem with enforcing the current code is that once it's exploded, the evidence is gone, right? And our prosecutor and police have trouble before the judge trying to make their case. So this ordinance would also prohibit anyone bringing their bag of fireworks, North Cove Park here. And all the city has to prove is that they possess fireworks. And if there's an exploded firework, that's evidence of the possession of that firework. So the adding the prohibition on the possession is an aid to law enforcement and enforcing your ordinance.
And does this also include streets and sidewalks?
It says accepting public right of way, so I'm guessing no.
That's what section 1. It
This-
doesn't prohibit the possession within the right of way. It prohibits discharge and use, but trying to prohibit the possession on the public right of way where people transport products is problematic.
But
So,
I'm sorry, but it prohibits the use or discharge.
yes,
On streets and sidewalks.
yes, yes, yes. It would prohibit the possession. Your new city hall location over at the Public Works.
Right now, they're not approved in parks, correct? But they're currently, are they allowed to be used on streets and sidewalks?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yes.
just not parks.
yes.
Okay.
Right. Our current ordinance in section 10-03190 prohibits the discharge or the firing of fireworks in city parks. This would expand that to prohibit the possession of those fireworks in city parks.
So I guess I have a question. So 1180 is something we discussed at the council retreat. At our most recent meeting is something we agreed on. The discussion about aerial stuff was tabled. And yet at least this is the second time that it's come up. And I'm not part of agenda planning for these. I don't understand how now we have a draft ordinance that you say it's not a ban, but it's anything that leaves the ground that basically I could pull the spark, which doesn't do it for me or many other people. So I had a citizen reach out to me and ask me why I'm not supportive of it. I said, because I committed, I said, we agreed as a council, there was consensus that we will go forward with 1180, which is what we've done. And now twice, tonight being the second time, we've pivoted to a de facto ban. That's not what we agreed on at the council retreat, nor at previous meetings. And so I'm in favor of the 1180, which is what we had previously discussed, to see how that impacts what we're doing with the city, and then having further discussion, trying to do those in tandem. I'm supporting that.
Yeah, your consensus at the last discussion was, well, bring back an ordinance that addresses this aerial consumer fireworks, but there was no consensus as to whether or not you were going to pass it. You just wanted to have further discussion about it. So that's why you see it back.
Can I ask the chief a question? How challenging would it be for our police department to then differentiate when we start listing specific fireworks as far as enforcing something like that? Because again, well, I guess part of is that one's possession as well. I mean, once it goes off, the evidence is kind of in pieces.
Right. So you have to gather that information to what's left and try to
Right.
determine if there's a crime or not.
Right. So is that even something feasible?
Anything is feasible. It's how much time and effort do we have to be able to enforce it,
Right. And do we have the manpower to do so?
right? We're down 4 right now. We just lost another officer June 1st, so we'll be down 5.
I guess
Is it more, in your opinion, is it more practical as a department to have your cruisers, because I know they're out and about, and I can only imagine the number of calls you get for a holiday where there's a lot of alcohol, a lot of partying going on. But while you're out cruising around, swinging by the parks, making sure they're not being lit off on parks and that type of thing versus policing aerials that would otherwise be legal and other, because if I'm understanding that aerials can be bought in the like fireworks stands at Safeway, correct?
those would still be illegal in the park.
But they'd be illegal in the park, but I'm talking about when we went back to I'm circling back between the two. The park is just, you can't have any on city property. Then we have one that specifically lists fireworks, but the fireworks that are listed, I think you can buy those in like the Boy Scout ones, can't you? I mean, those are legal otherwise by the state?
Right. These are all legal consumer fireworks that are listed here. So you would be doing something different than state law, which is why this ordinance has a provision that it would not be effective immediately. You have to wait a year for this ordinance to be effective because state law requires anything more restrictive to have that year delay. But yes, if you were to approve an ordinance as this one is drafted or whatever, yes, you are doing something more restrictive than state law.
But banning them from the parks is not more restrictive.
No, because that's simply a site-specific area where the fireworks may be used.
So
State law doesn't address that. It simply addresses what fireworks are legal, what fireworks are not, and when they can be sold and purchased.
So kind of piggybacking off that, could I just make a request that we pick one of these as a group and work through it and then move on to the next one, so we're not bouncing back and forth? I think that would probably be easier.
I guess I would suggest that, I mean, I would differ a little bit with you, Councilmember Ewan. I do think that we want to have a couple of comparisons to look at. That's what I recall. And so
Well, the two ordinances kind of they both address fireworks, but kind of different.
different.
They're different subjects.
I guess I would say, since we're kind of getting in the minutia of this stuff, maybe we schedule it for a workshop.
Mm.
And discuss. So, I mean, I don't know as though getting it tonight, we're really prepared to do that.
So I think the intent of the 1180 was to, if circumstances permitted, that we have that in place for the current year, so we can
Yeah.
have an additional year to evaluate what that's like. If we don't get to it, that's, I would like to see it if we can get to that, to see we have 2024 data for how effective that is.
Yeah.
For the election.
I'd be okay with 1180. The only thing I'd want to discuss really would be the right of way portion, because I think as someone mentioned in the past, maybe it's safer to allow people to ignite these on the fire or on the sidewalk instead of, right in front of their house. If our goal here is, reducing fire calls, then so anyway, that's really the only thing I see. Otherwise, I'm okay with the 1180 and the whole parks thing and breaking that out. That's just me.
And I think 1180 also is more respectful of the advisory vote from a couple years ago.
Yeah, it still allows people to enjoy fireworks. It's just, like you said, site specific.
It's site specific. It's just they're not to do it at city parks. and
Right. Yeah.
City hall campus, other city property. It's just like a private property owner could say, I don't want you coming on my on my property to set off your fireworks.
Can I just mention one thing though, what we're missing is there is still legal fireworks that people buy on the reservation and bring to our city to fire off, and those are illegal still. That could be
Yes.
done with a misdemeanor or gross misdemeanor, depending on the type. So people don't misunderstand that out here.
You can't enjoy those fireworks legally. Okay.
That is the whole crux of the issue. We're messing around with trying to regulate approved fireworks when the illegal fireworks are the problem. So, it is a dilemma. There's no doubt about it, but short of building a wall at 88th Street in Marysville, how do you control it?
Well, and that's why I think 1180, again, except for maybe the right of way discussing that. I think for me, that's a viable step, Oh, uh-oh.
What do you want to
See,
bring?
they,
Got chatter in the
they-
wings.
They included the original, the old, that's why I think you see consumer 1180 in your packet. It's not the ordinance that that I drafted.
All right, workshop it is, Gary.
So,
Let's just,
I think we'll have to put this off to
Okay,
to another date anyway. And I'll make sure we get the right ordinance in the packet, but it's not the right.
City Clerk Challen, do we have time at the next workshop to have this on the agenda?
yes.
Okay, so I guess that solves that problem.
That
There we
would
go.
give you time to pass it before the
It's all on purpose.
July 4th.
I don't think we're gonna get there anyway.
Now it's time to-
Um,
I have one question, if I may. If there's support for the parks ordinance, would we be able to break that off in order to get signs and make sure that we can enforce it
Well,
this
that's
year?
what we're talking about, is bringing 1180 back to the actual 1180 back to a workshop so we can discuss it and then get on the agenda.
Perfect, thank you.
So it's already broken out.
Okay, so that's our direction, workshops. Okay. All right, council code of conduct.
Council President, I just wanted to mention at 8 o'clock, you'll need a motion to extend. If you'd like to defer this item to, you're welcome to, or I can get it started.
Is this gonna take more than 10 minutes?
That is completely up to you guys. I think we've drafted a code of conduct as kind of a starting point for discussion. So we're just open to feedback, things that you want to include, things that are not included. Yeah, and I think Greg can answer specifics as well. We worked on this together.
Let's see what happens at 8 o'clock.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, I would just say again, it's included in the packet. We went through several samples from other cities. And I think we presented those at the last retreat, and some were long and some were short. We kind of went through and decided what we thought was important to include. And came up with this kind of in between. Not long or not super short. So just open to feedback.
I appreciate the starting point and having a document to review. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you feel like there's anything in this that stands out that is in opposition of anything we're currently doing, or would be a real change in practice or procedure?
I don't think so. I mean, Greg can weigh in. I think it's just maybe some feels kind of obvious, but also good to just have in writing as just things to remember and points that are important.
Most of the provisions of this code, dealing, especially those dealing with the ethical issues, they're already in state law.
Hmm.
And this just kind of puts them in your own local resolution where people can look at it, they can see it, and it's not so distant from them. The provisions in here about courtesy, that's not in state law. That's that would be yours. You would own that. So I think what was tried to be done was to put in those type of things that people would generally expect of their public officials in terms of how they address each other, the public, and things that this council has already talked about at some of the meetings about how we talk to staff and that sort of thing. So those type of things were included in this. There was some discussion about whether or not to put in any, try to put penalties or to give the public, third parties, the right to make complaints under this code. That was not done. This is limited to if you as a council member or the officials saw that there was a problem, then you would bring that up to the council and you would police yourself. This is basically, it's a police yourself a policy. But it's one then that you all can see and you all know kind of what you generally expect of one another in your dealings with one another, with staff, and avoiding getting into a problem with violating state ethics codes for public officials.
And I think it is good to know, kind of adding on Councilmember Jurstad, we're not drafting this tonight because there is a problem that we're trying to address. This came out of your WCIA training last year as a best practice to have something like this in place, and realizing we didn't, that's where we started. So.
Well, I'd like to say that being the longest serving council member here right now, over the past 16 years, I have not seen very many instances where we would have a problem on this council. However, having this in writing is for those people that might come after us. And I think that's important for us to realize that we're setting the tone, and we always have set the tone for how the council operates. And when we have new council members come on, if they can have the council code of conduct besides our procedures, then they're going to understand what they can and cannot do and what is expected of them. And it's going to help it's going to help the council in many, many ways of how we already operate right now. So, I mean, yeah, we've had a few problems. Okay, great. Everybody does. I've been watching other councils and holy cow, I wouldn't want to be on those councils. So I really appreciate the way that we have conducted ourselves as a council over the last 16 years, and there's been quite a few changes, but I think this is a great thing to have. So we might want to parse some of the things and maybe do a little bit of wordsmithing. I don't have any off the top of my head right now, but it's certainly worthy of discussion. I think it's worthy of having.
Clerk Chellen, I appreciate you bringing up the point about this kind of the self-policing intent. That was sort of where I went, where I was reading through this. There were different things. I'm like, oh gosh, I have to, have I done that, or has anybody else done that? So it's, I appreciate it as a document that helps give us some parameters around like looking at our own actions, making sure that we're following the rules that are really already in place in terms of state law and ethics. But it's a document that we can then use to kind of look through and make sure that we're minding our P's and Q's and doing what we're supposed to do. So but stating that out loud, that's really the intent is helpful. So thank you.
Any other comments?
Kim, I guess what you're seeing with other councils, typically those council members are going mano a mano instead of using their proxies and allies to do their work for them. And so everyone's got their methods for, getting what they want. But I can just say that, I mean, there's nothing that we can put in writing that's going to make someone do the right thing for the right reason. And I can say there is a council in the area that I think is the best council that I'm aware of with the way they operate.
It's this one, right?
It's like Steve.
And it's not a knock. We do a great job here in Lake Stevens. I'm just saying the way that they operate, and they operate on consensus. And there's an issue right now in their city, a very contentious issue where they're at 6-1 and the person that's in opposition brought up the issue. And they're holding out until that person can have their issues addressed. The council president could easily put it forward in a 6-1 vote and push it through. But that's the way they operate. So I have like kind of a different view. I think that we can't always get there. But I think when people act in good faith, and realize that, hey, it's just not, you're not gonna win everything. And I can support someone even if I don't agree with their positions on things. So no matter what we do with this document, if someone is intent on circumventing that, they will. And so I think great effort to put that through. But like I said, I just see people circumvent things, if that's intent. But I think it is a good way to, in a way, self-police us. And monitor that. And, we saw it recently in a local city where a council member violated some of these things and there was a recall effort for that council member. It failed. They didn't get enough signatures, but there was still an effort made to recall that council member for their misconduct.
So by consensus, do we want to agree to insert this in our council procedures?
Yeah.
As a starting point, and then
It's a good idea.
we can always review it at our retreat and so forth and, okay,
Can I bring it back on May 28th on consent? For approval?
sure.
Sure.
Why not? We
Thank
got
you.
4 minutes left.
Thanks.
How was that?
We have executive session, right?
No.
No.
No, we do not.
Sorry.
If I will use 1 minute of the 4 minutes if I
Yeah.
can. Workshop next week on the 21st. I'm sorry that I don't have items in front of you, but I'll read what they are. Sports tourism presentation, Snohomish County Sports Commission, Tammy Dunn will be here for a brief presentation. I do need to check with Shannon. I think she may be ready to talk about stormwater fee discussion again. We'll have an ILA with the county for the affordable housing. Aaron's gonna be bringing you a fleet and facilities update. And then we'll also bring back the fireworks ordinance.
Okay, perfect, great. I'm
1180.
1180. Yeah, yes, 1180.
Move to adjourn. Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.